All right, Numbers 22, let's call this one cognitive dissonance because that seems to explain exactly what is going on in this chapter where Balaam, a person described as a prophet of God, is hired by people who are not of God to curse the people of God. And hopefully as we move through the explanation, it'll all fall into line. But first, let's look at a definition of cognitive dissonance from Very Well Mind. The definition is going to be kind of, but I think the explanation afterward might help us out. So first, the definition. The American Psychological Association defines cognitive dissonance as an unpleasant psychological state resulting from inconsistency between two or more elements in a cognitive system. Okay, the explanation though. The inconsistency between what people believe and how they behave motivates them to engage in actions that will help minimize feelings of discomfort. People attempt to relieve this tension in different ways, such as by rejecting, explaining away, or avoiding new information, which seems to be exactly what Balaam is doing here, as he is rejecting not only the word from the Lord that comes to him at night to warn him about going with Balak, who is trying to hire him to curse Israel. He rejects the intervention of his donkey, who he thinks is simply plotting against him. And he wants to kill the donkey, even though the donkey seems to have been loyal throughout his service to Balaam throughout its life. And then after the angel of the Lord opens Balaam's eyes to see that the donkey was simply saving him from certain death, he still persists in trying to partner with Balak, not the people of God, against the people of God. And understand Balaam's unique circumstance. Even though he is not of Israel, he is described as being a prophet of God. And later on, in reflecting on this story, the New Testament is going to say that a donkey had its mouth open to literally speak to him, to try to restrain the madness of the prophet, understanding how persistently he wanted to partner with the enemies of Israel against not only God's people Israel, but the plans that he had for them. And if you understand how the story turns out, he's going to continue to perpetually try to curse the people of God, but each time he has the good sense to understand that he can only say what God has told him to say, but for whatever reason, cognitive dissonance seems to be leading him in a path that is inconsistent from his words. And so he is consistently telling Balak, I can only say what God tells me to say, but he is consistently partnering with Balak, trying to curse the people of God to the point where when he finally runs out of prophecies that Balak wants to get, because the prophecies are actually blessing the people that Balak wants cursed, he simply counsels him in the way to make Israel stumble, and he finally is successful in doing that in later chapters. But later on, the story is going to say he gets his way, and he, after being successful in causing the people of God to stumble, he's going to perish with the enemies of God. And so understand, the New Testament is going to go on to talk about this, and it's going to really reiterate some things we've seen in famous passages in prophets such as Isaiah. John 5 is going to say this in Jesus' own ministry. He's going to ask this question to those opposing him. How could you possibly believe? You like to have your friends praise you and do not care about the praise that the only God can give. And that is when he is disputing with the Pharisees in the contemporary English version. He's saying you can't really have both the praise of God and the praise of people who aren't really aligned with God. But we have this desire on the outside to say all the right things, even though our actions may be moving in different directions, much like Balaam. Saying that I can only say what God tells me to say, but consistently partnering with people who are opposing God's will. Likewise, Isaiah is going to say in chapter 29, verse 13, and the Lord said, because this people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me, and their fear of me is a commandment taught by men. We cannot say that we are serving God, which sounds great, while we are using theology to actually undermine the very things he's asking us to do. And so those are a number of ways in which, even though Balaam may seem remote and extreme and having an intervention directly from an angel, it seems to make it absolutely clear why Abraham told the rich man when he was appealing to send somebody to my family to let them know. Abraham says, and they won't believe. And it seems like he might be exaggerating until we look back to stories like this and realize there are times when even an intervention from an angel of heaven does not restrain the cognitive dissonance of one who is determined to partner with the enemies of God, which is why we say his best to you as you go forward in him.